Okay, so as Miranda said, I'm Justin Kupa. I'm currently a software engineer level two, have about 3 years of experience currently, and also I have experience as a tech consultant working with majority nonprofits and other minority-owned small businesses, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So the gist of this tech talk will be about building an online presence in a digital-driven marketplace. This comes from a lot of my experience as a tech consultant. A lot of times when businesses are starting, and especially when I moved out here to Atlanta, first and foremost, I saw that there were many entrepreneurs, and their one hardest task when they were starting their business was, where do I start with technology? How can I leverage it in my business? And ultimately they would always ask me, I need a website, I need a website. So that's kind of where I got my experience from my personal projects, building websites for businesses that I've started in the past, building mobile applications for a nonprofit that I co-founded. All of these experiences helped me direct others and kind of give them the do's and don'ts when starting to leverage tech in your business and building an online presence in a digital driven marketplace. As society goes on, it seems that we're moving more and more towards the digital. So this talk is going to help you leverage technology without burning out yourself and the business owner and all that comes from technology in your business. So without further ado, let's get started.
Um, Choose.
Was that something? Did you say something, Damaris? Okay, okay, I'll just continue then. So the first thing that I want to do is just give you guys a definition of digital presence. And the definition is as follows. A digital presence is how an entity appears to people online. So whether you're an influencer, it'd be how your social media profile or whatever other mediums you have to share your information, how you look to other people online, whether you're a business or a nonprofit, it's how people can interact with your business without physically talking to you, going into your store, calling you over the phone. It's your digital footprint online. So there
Share
are
as
three main.
webinar. You guys share on your team, share to your page, share to your group.
I think you're unmuted, Damaris. Okay. Continuing again. There are three main points of a digital presence. The first and foremost would be websites. This is something that many business owners have asked me about, the ins and outs of it. And it's where we'll be spending most of our time because this is the first line of defense when somebody is viewing your business. It's something that can speak for you when you're not actually speaking. And it's the first interaction that many people have with businesses nowadays in this day and age that we're in. Secondly, I would just want to touch on social networks and blogs. With younger consumers, my generation specifically, we're much more social media oriented and focused, and that's the way many people find out about their new favorite product or new favorite service or just whatever's going on around them. So this is an important topic that I just wanted to touch on and see how you can leverage this with your business. And lastly, but not least, there are also mobile applications. And this is a this is a different medium and it's more towards people that are on the go. If your constituents will be using your service on the go or need to use certain features that you want to leverage in your business, like geolocation, taking pictures are a big part of your business model, things of that nature. So that would be where a mobile oriented application would be of advantage to your business. But let's start firstly with websites. So, as a business owner, when you're building a website or looking to create a website, these are three main keys that I think are important to keep in mind before jumping in head first, because websites are a lot to both maintain, create, and manage. There's a monetary investment, there's a time investment, and there's also just the energy investment that goes into creating and maintaining a website. So, I want to make you aware of this. So whether you're going to develop the website yourself or outsource it to a contractor or a developer on your team, you'll know some things to look out for and to keep you ahead of the game. So you don't end up in a situation you don't want to be in where you're maintaining something that seems to be out of your control. So First, I think one thing to keep in mind when you're creating a website is what is the scale of your business? This will help come into effect of if you want to if you're a small scale business, there's an investment of time and energy that would go into creating a website. So you don't want to overinvest in a website and take away from your core business model if you're a small scale business. And if you're a large scale business, then maybe it may be justifiable to invest in contracting out a website for a developer to make for you. So just taking an internal audit of where you're at with your business will help you understand ultimately what type of investment you should make into your website. If you should use a website builder, or if you should go and develop something more customizable or caterable to your constituents. Secondly, the thing you will want to know is who are your end users or customers. Knowing who your end users are will help you understand what requirements your website will need. If you're catering to a demographic that's older constituents or somebody that your medical healthcare provider, things of that nature, you may want a more simple user interface and simple website without too many bells and whistles that may cater to somebody that doesn't have as much of a technical acumen and understanding of how to navigate websites. So firstly, knowing what scale you are in your business and then knowing who your end user and customer is will help you navigate toward where and what type of website you should ultimately create. And lastly, I think this is a point that goes without too much emphasis, but I want to emphasize it just for your awareness. Keep in mind how much you want to handle the technical upkeep of your website. And this can go into how complex your website is, or if you just want to totally outsource that to somebody else that you don't want to even think about the technology that's underlying it. Just know that websites, depending on their complexity, they are a lot to maintain. And I would think of a website as not a baby, but a child of yours. Like, you know, how you instill core values in a child and it's old enough to go out on its own and speak for itself and represent you and your family. However, you ultimately check in with that website or child every once or twice a year, update it, make dependency upgrades, things of that nature. So it speaks for itself and it speaks for your business on your behalf, but there is a lot of technical maintenance that comes with it. And I wanted to make business owners aware of that because a lot of times they just want to get out there and get to going and create their website so they can have a flashy business, but don't stop to think about how much this will take from an investment point of me as a business owner. So wanted to alert you of that. And I know I'm speaking a lot, so I just want to make sure that there aren't any questions from the audience before I conclude on to the next slide.
So I'm going to jump in. I don't see any questions, Justin, on the um, from the live stream, but I do have a question since you talked about maintaining the website. What would you give as some tips to like business owners and entrepreneurs who are just starting out and it was, already a struggle for them to get their website up? What would you give as some tips on how to create a website that's easy to maintain so they wouldn't have to pay somebody to keep up the maintenance?
Definitely. In 2 slides from now, I'll get into that in more detail, but at a high level, technology always advances. Like every day, Gen AI is coming out and crypto, there's a lot more developments that happen day by day in technology. And as such, dependency things become outdated, websites become dated week by week, day by day. So ultimately, there are simple solutions for creating a website, such as website builders. I know some of you may know Shopify, Squarespace, think Wix, things of that nature. They operate more so, if you would think about it as another analogy, like a PowerPoint, where it's more of a drag and drop nature than actually typing and coding and working on development frameworks. So that's a lot more of a high level solution. You do lose a little bit of customization um, and being able to change everything to exactly how you want or need it. However, it does take away some of the headache because the services like Square, Shopify, Wix, they do a lot of the underlying maintenance and updating of the website on their own. So you don't have to worry about it. So it takes some of the burden off the business owner.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course, of course. And we'll circle back to this in a little bit more detail later, as I said, but just wanted to answer that at a high level. So moving on, this slide shares some of the components of a homegrown website, and this is the alternative to a website builder like Square, Wix, or Square or Shopify, where you yourself as a designer or a coder, a developer that you contract this out to, these are some of the main components that you should expect to see when they have their technical design review with you and are going over different bells and whistles, underlying functionality of the website. So first and foremost, the backend database, this serves as like the heart and lifeblood of your website. This is where you securely store dynamic customer, product, and business information that's necessary for your website. This data store can be queried by the website, so it can then get the information that it needs, whether it's customer information or product information. And in addition to just being a source to query data, you can also retroactively look at this data and possibly even use some of the new Gen AI techniques to gain valuable business insights about your product or your constituents, such as if you want to keep metrics on how many times customer X clicked on product Y, and then use this information to then ultimately recommend products like this product Y that the customer might also want but doesn't know about just yet. These are some ways that you can ultimately leverage your data that just happens organically by people interacting with your website, that can drive more sales and just get people actually some things that they may want but just might not have the insight to know to click on, things of that nature. Secondly, the thing that you need to decide on is the web development framework. A framework is a paradigm for web development, and it helps streamline some of the development process so you don't have to work on as much of the configuration and a lot of the redundant parts of just creating a website. Think of it as like the blueprint for your website and the underlying infrastructure. This helps streamline that process so the developer can work on creating the features, components, styling of your website, and not the underlying infrastructure that can be a bit mundane and redundant at times. Thirdly, we have a hosting service, and I'll speak to the hosting service in an analogy. Think of a hosted service as you paying like a TV network station like ABC. You're paying channel ABC monthly to make your website, or in this case, like a channel that you provide, viewable to everybody in the world. And this comes through your website address that we'll get into next. But by you paying a monthly fee to channel ABC, they make your content viewable to anyone that ultimately types in your address or clicks to your channel number, things of that nature. So this is what a hosting service is like. It just makes your website accessible. You send all the files to the hosting service, and then they broadcast that to the internet so that anybody using your website domain name will be able to access the content on your website. And lastly, but not least, this is the more creative part, thinking of a domain name for your business. This is the www dot address that ultimately has something to do with your business, and it has to be a unique identifier for your business. So somebody trying to get to another website doesn't accidentally go to yours because of a name that's not unique enough. So you can think about this as like a phone number of some sort. Each particular phone number is unique to the individual who owns that. Same with the domain name. You have to outright buy it. There's different services online that we can talk about later in the Q&A to buy website domain names. There are some, however, that are already taken. So you do have to get a bit creative, and you can change minute things about the website name in order to get something that hasn't been taken already. But it should be attributed to your business name, and we'll get into that a bit later. Any questions at this point, Miranda?
No questions. It's great.
Okay, sounds good. So moving on to the different mediums you can use to create a website. The first would be the low code or no code solutions. These are the website builders that I talked about a bit earlier. They provide predefined templates and components to bring your website to life with little to no coding knowledge needed. This approach has a low learning curve. However, it offers a bit less customization than if you were to go the alternative route that I'll get into later of front-end development frameworks and hiring a developer, developing a website from the ground up yourself. And to give you an idea of what this actually looks like in practice, there is a short clip that I want to share with you just to get an idea of what this actually looks like to see if this is something feasible for you and your business. So I do have this on mute just to give a high level understanding of what's going on. Like I said, it's a bit like PowerPoint design. You drag and drop different features. You can double click on those features as here, the tutorial giver, he's double clicking on the button and changing the text that's inside the button. Also, this is actually Squarespace, if you don't know, a popular website builder. And this component here has a linkage function. You can have that linked to an email address that you want to pop up on the click. You can have it linked to another website or another navigation component of this interior web page. There's a lot of different functionalities that allow for customization with Squarespace and other website builders. But to get into the customization nature of things, you can make the display larger as you see him doing currently. You can drag the components, and it's very much like I think of it just like PowerPoint, how you drag something until it's to your liking, and you can continue to customize in an iterative process. So this is the interviewer here, or the tutorial giver here. He's a photographer and was able to make a website, a portfolio website for his brand and his services. So it's not, I wouldn't say he's the most technical person from looking at the tutorial, but still nonetheless, he was able to make a finished product that looked professional and customers can interface with without having to know code and be a developer himself. So this is just to give you an idea of what's possible, to see if that's something that you think you could do or want to outsource to somebody else to do. Also getting into the alternative, which is a front-end development framework. These are what I've talked about in the homegrown solution. They allow you to customize nearly every aspect of your website, and many components are built from scratch. Thus, front-end development does require very extensive front-end development experience and understanding of state management to manage the navigation of your website. And just for knowledge, there are two front-end development frameworks that are very popular, both in industry and in small businesses. The first being Angular. This is a development framework developed by Google, and this is more keen for very dynamic, multifaceted websites that have a lot of different tabs and navigation and pages that they could link to, rather than its counterpart, React Native, another front-end development framework that is more suited for landing pages, portfolio sites that have very few navigational templates, more for simple sites, and Angular is more for dynamic sites that have a lot of dependencies, and it's great for managing navigation through to robustly built websites. So yeah, I just want to touch on those at a high level. If you do end up contracting out to a developer, these are two very good frameworks to know going forward. And you can also do further research on your own. But just by and large, there are hundreds of front-end development frameworks. So don't get stuck on these two. They're constantly changing day by day, as happens in technology. So ultimately, it comes down to, what does my developer think is the best suited framework to provide value to my constituents, and ask the question of why this particular framework is good. And hopefully through this tutorial, you'll know a little bit more on the questions to ask, and just to know that the developer, it does have your best interest for your business and isn't trying to overload you with information. So just wanted to give a high level introduction to that. And Miranda, I pass it to you if you have any questions at the moment.
No, this is great. Very good information.
Gotcha. Okay. So now we've talked a bit about websites and the different options you have there. Next, I want to get into some of the newer updates that have happened with social media and how to leverage that to your benefit in the digital business space. So with my generation, there's a lot more importance on social media and a way to expose people to your business, inform people about your values and the offerings that your business provides. In this realm, there are many different stimuli and distractions that come along with social media. So it is often hard to engage an audience or keep an audience. However, there are a few strategies to do so, and I'll get into them now. First, there is a strategy of make it and they will come. And this is just the process of creating content for your business or brand and providing valuable insight on a common problem that your product aims to solve. And by creating content, creating value by solving problems or giving information on how to solve problems, you're by nature creating things that your constituents will ultimately find themselves to. And for an example, if say you're a social conscious business that works to lower greenhouse emissions or something like that, if you create content around the ramifications of littering, not recycling, things of that nature, and just green focused content, people that will likely use your service that you provide that is in the realm of being more of a green focused company will likely click on your website, look at your content if it does provide value to them. And by nature, you will often have a trickle down effect to them looking more into your brand and being interested in what you can provide to them. So that's one strategy of just making content yourself that will be valuable to your end user. And ultimately, they will come to seek out your information that you're sharing. Secondly, we have a find your audience strategy. And this is a strategy of kind of doing your own investigation to where your target customer would be in the digital sphere. And this can be through visiting social media posts and topics, or even social media pages that your audience or your customer would ultimately follow or be interested in. And through this process, you can either engage in discourse with the customer, or you could even promote your brand. Oftentimes, if you're, say, on Twitter and you're on a Twitter post that's about reduce, reuse, and recycle or something like that, you can promote on their page through Twitter ads to be shown to people that are interested in green topics and things of that nature that would more than likely be interested in your green business as this example shows. The last possible option or the last engagement strategy that we'll get into is being the social media. And this goes hand in hand with creating your own website, creating your own social media page, or even having your own personal blog that would be applicable to your constituents. By keeping them in your ecosystem of your website, your blog, or mobile application, things of that nature, you will very much so have a natural engagement with your customer, saying that if you create discourse that's engaging to them on your digital mediums, oftentimes you can direct your own advertisement. You can display links to your products in the social media or in the website, blog, or mobile application, and ultimately drive more engagement to your products or the services that you are providing to constituents that are naturally and organically in your ecosystem. So you don't have to worry about fighting with the next social media page or the next business that's promoting on the platform of Twitter or Instagram. You can keep them within your ecosystem if you provide these mediums for them to engage and interact with. And this is what being the social media is, and this is what having a digital footprint provides. Before I move on, any other questions?
No, we're good.
Oh, good. Cool. Continue on then. And before we change topics from social media, this is more for business owners that have product-based businesses. As of recent, there's been more of a social media e-commerce craze, and this has came through the popularity of TikTok Shop, Instagram Shop, Facebook Shop, and they're ingrained in the respective social media vertical. So, say you're scrolling on TikTok one day. Um, Either influencers or your own personal page, you can create a content video describing your product or even just doing the latest trend that's a bit tangential to your product or offering. And in the actual application, you can click on and it will show your product and service that the constituent or Instagram or TikTok user can buy within the TikTok ecosystem without changing applications, without remembering the name of your brand and typing into Safari and doing the whole 9 yards. It makes it more of a seamless process to go from seeing a product to checking out a product to just grease the wheels a bit more to make it easier for the customer to engage with your product or service. This, as a business owner, how you can ultimately partake in this new craze or trend of social media e-commerce. Firstly, you just set up a professional business account on any of these platforms that provide it, like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Secondly, you can either connect a pre-existing Shopify, Square, or other popular e-commerce account that you have and display the products in those domains on the website. Or you could do the manual work of adding products that you offer in the actual TikTok shop, Facebook shop, and Instagram shop, and have that be displayed on your professional business page on these social media platforms. So this is a new way to kind of engage with many of the younger generation that are using social media more to have a more streamlined process instead of linking to this application, that website, but to have a process in application so they don't even have to leave and can purchase your product and continue scrolling to their next favorite video. So yes, that kind of covers the e-commerce aspect of social media, but would love for any questions if there are any. And if not, we can continue on to our next topic. Last but not least, we have mobile applications. And just like a website, it's important to do a bit of critical thinking and understanding of your business and your end goal before jumping in to create a mobile application. The first thing you want to think about when before creating a mobile application is ask yourself this one question. Do I need a mobile application instead of a mobile-friendly website? Oftentimes, when you create a website, they are able to be viewed on a mobile phone, whether you use the Safari browser on your iPhone or Android, or the Google browser on your iPhone or Android. They have capability to still be viewed in the same capacity depending on how your website is built. And it's a bit dependent on whether you use a website builder. They have that ingrained into the service. If you have a web development framework, it's more something that you have to configure yourself, but that's for another day. But just ask yourself, what benefit would my user get and what benefit would I get from as a business by investing in this mobile application and developing this mobile application? If there is substantial benefit you feel, then it would be worth it. But if you can get the same benefit while keeping one standard platform, whether it be a website that can just be accessed on a mobile phone, and that'll get you most of the way, I think that is a very viable consideration to consider at the end of the day. Secondly, one thing to ask yourself as a business owner is, will my end user leverage my service primarily on the go? And this comes into the functionality of your service and what you want your constituents to be able to do. If you have a service that's oriented around taking pictures, posting pictures, messaging other users of your service, or using things like geolocation, knowing what your service provides and what you want your customer to do and what features you'll provide will help you know, is this mobile application something that I need, and should I develop it, and will it provide me value and a return on my investment? And lastly, one thing to think about before creating a mobile application is, which operating system do I want to cater to? In America, the most popular operating system is iOS, which is Apple's operating system. Apple has their own development framework development frameworks that's catered to their operating system, while Android has their own. Think about who your end user is, and will it be fruitful to invest in both development processes and two different work streams, and maybe shelling out double the money for two different developers to work on this product for me that can be on the iOS App Store and the Android Google Play Store. Think about these things, and we'll get into how you might be able to kind of hack this development stream and create one product that works on both Android and iOS. But it is important to think about your end users and who will they be, and what operating system or what type of phone do they have, and make sure that you create a viable product for them to ultimately use on their native phone. And before we get into the more details of a mobile application, are there any high-level questions for me to engage with?
I think I have a question, and this would be coming from me, Justin, and this is great information because I think we all at some point think about, venturing and trying to keep up with the trends. And I know it has crossed my mind about creating a mobile app, and I asked that question, like, with the people who use this app, what would be the benefit? Because there's so many different applications. At this point, we are oversaturated with applications and new signups. And I don't know about you, but I have 1,001 passwords and I don't know them all currently at this moment. So my question to you would be, like, let's say somebody, and I love that you said, think about your user in creating a mobile app, because most people don't do that. They think, oh, I just want to have this app so I can have it. To think about the actual user and could they benefit from it. So let's say that someone does that work and they say, okay, I know without a doubt that my consumer would be able to utilize my services through an app, and it could be more convenient for them to have. What would be the first step in someone who has no technical resources for them to start moving towards doing the app? Would the first step to you be research? Would it be finding a developer? What would you say would be the first step if someone who was totally green wanted to develop an app for their service?
I think you hit it on the head with your first option. Ultimately, research, the first being research of your customer, and even do some qualitative surveying, like ask customer A, hey, if I had this application, what are 3 things that you would need in order for it to be something you would download? So then then eventually when you do go to a developer, they're not trying to figure out what you think you need for your business, but you can give them an ask sheet of what I need for this application, and this is what my customer needs. So I need you to be able to provide this feature A for customer A, things like that nature. So I think it all starts with research and starts with your customer, because ultimately, through talking to your customer, doing some more in-depth research and actually talking to them to know what are the things they find valuable, it will ultimately direct where your development goes. And so you're not creating the worst thing you can do as a business is create something that nobody really wants to interact with, or just creating too much or overdeveloping something when a much more smaller product would have filled the void for the customer. So the customer will ultimately direct you. So doing that research ahead of time before seeking out a developer is always a good process.
Nice. No, that's great. Great information. And Whitney May online on Facebook is right in my head, because this was going to be my follow-up question. And she says, Hi, how do you go about finding a developer to create an app or website? And so do you have suggestions on the development process and how to seek out a developer, or maybe some developers that you can mention that you know that are trustworthy and reliable?
So this is a great question. And I think the best way to find a developer, whether it be for a website or application, is always firstly through referrals through whether it be competitors in your business space. If you see they have an application that's really nifty and does everything you would want from an application, reaching out to them to see, hey, who's your developer? I'm looking for some services. But starting with products and applications that you actually like and are comparable to what you would want, getting to know their development process and how they went about finding their developer would be a great first step. Secondly, there's a lot of contracting website, whether it be Fiverr or Upwork. These are marketplaces, so to say, where different developers, whether it be software or mobile application developers, the work is contracted through the service, and they have a history or rating system and review system that's embedded into the platform where you can see, okay, developer John Doe worked with 8 people. They gave him 5 stars, and this is a portfolio of his work. So these are ways that you can do a little bit of investigation on your own before going out and shelling X amount of dollars for development work. You can see some of their track record, and if they were a good person to interact with, were they marketable, and were they amenable to your needs of your business. Those are great ways. Um, those are the most common practices that I see personally. And like I said, the first option would be through referrals. If you know anybody that's had a website or app development have been built, those are great options. And secondly, just going on popular contracting websites like Upwork and Fiverr to see people's work in the past and see how they've ultimately provided a professional product, and was it a great experience for the business owner that contracted out that work. Those are my 2 main suggestions in that round.
Those are very good. I don't know why I forgot all about Upwork and Fiverr in thinking about, because I don't think you automatically think about those two spaces to think about developing an app. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really great information. Also, one last kind of follow-up question to that. Is it also possible to, like, let's say I have an app on my phone and I love the way that it functions and works. Could I Google who the developer is for that and then kind of seek out them as well? Is there a way to like find out who developed the apps that I might love on my phone? Like I like how, maybe Mighty Networks operates or something like that. And you're like, oh, I would love
Right.
something like that.
So that I don't know to a T because I've never done that personally, but I do know on the App Store, if you scroll down to the bottom, it will say what company developed that application. You may have to do a little bit of investigation on your own on circling back to, okay, let me Google search this company and see if they have any um, internet history of sharing their developers, things of that nature. So it's just about Google searching and doing further investigation on that front. It may be a bit more challenging in that route to see if you can find the breadcrumbs, but I think ultimately with people having such a large digital footprint nowadays, you're only one Google search away from finding that developer or that of the application you love. So those are always good options when seeking out more information.
Very helpful. Thank you for that, Justin. And Whitney said, awesome, thanks. So we're
Of
good.
course.
Very
Great.
good.
So when you are contracting your work out to a developer for an application, these are also homegrown components of applications that you should expect to hear from your developer in your technical design review. Um, First and foremost, once again, the heart and blood of an application is, as well as a website, is a backend database. And like I said earlier, this stores the user and product information and also allows for app metrics to be captured. Um, and additionally, you can query this information and it be displayed in your application. So this is really the lifeblood in the application, because without the product data, the product information, descriptions, things of that nature, you want to be able to build a fully functional application that is dynamic enough to be used by an end user. Secondly, we'll get into mobile development frameworks more in the next slide, but at a high level, so you want to select the framework that's compatible with the operating system you intend to support, whether that be an Android user or an Apple user or both. There are frameworks that help kind of streamline the process by being compatible with both Android and Apple operating systems as well. And we'll get into that more in the next slide. Thirdly, you want to think about having the App Store and App Store license and registration. This goes for both the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. You need to register your LLC name as a developer. You have to register the name of your application because you can't have duplicate names for applications on the app stores. And also pay a small fee. I think for the App Store, it's a $200 annual fee. And for the Google Play Store, it's a one-time $100 fee. So these are all things like more the underlying, not technical parts of developing an application, just having it in a form that users can ultimately download in a streamlined way on the most popular app stores. And lastly, you'll need a provider that will provide login and authentication services. There are many providers of this, but ultimately you want to allow for safe storing of your users' data and privacy to create for a secure login process, have them able to change passwords and update their information as accordingly, and also even leverage two-factor authentication in your application, as security is something that you want to be at the forefront of your development process. So these are at a high level 4 key components of creating a homegrown application that you will want to be aware of when you're either contracting out this development work to a developer through the services that I talked about a bit ago, or if you want to get your hands dirty and try it out yourself. These are very, very vital parts of an application. So before I go on to the next page, any questions?
No, you're doing good. We have a general question we can save to the end, but none about the app. So this is great.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're nearing the end, so bear with me and we'll get to those questions. So just like creating a website, there are low code and no code solutions to building a mobile application. There are popular app building services like Bubble, as we'll get into a bit in the demo, where much like a website builder, you're dragging and dropping components, icons, pictures into a mobile phone screen form and kind of tweaking it to your liking until it looks the way that you want it to be. And these components are fully functional, so you don't have to worry about coding or anything like that to make it work. It comes out the box like that, and it's relatively customizable to your specific needs. And I did mention the application builder Bubble, and we'll go into a small demo to show you how that works to give you a high level idea if you want to build it yourself or contract this process out to somebody else, just to give you an idea. So I'll narrate a bit for this tutorial giver. He's creating components, much like in Microsoft PowerPoint. You can create text box, you can create buttons and edit the functionality. I'll go back a little bit so you can see that in more detail. Creating, like, you can change the appearance, you can change the functionality of the button. If you want to say, click me, you could change the text right here as shows, and also change the color and different stylistic things like that. And there's no code necessary in this. You just basically drag and drop the visual element or component that you want into the visual plane and adjust it as necessary. And continuing on, you can even inject pictures if you want to upload it from your desktop, and it will eventually show up in the actual screen, as you see here. And these components are fully customizable. You can resize, reshape an image, change the font of a button, and more or less just change it to your liking without knowing the underlying functionality and underlying code that makes that button or object work. So that's just a high level intro to some of the app builders. And last but not least, we have the app development frameworks. And I alluded to earlier how you can kind of streamline the process to make a fully customizable or fully homegrown application in one fell swoop without creating two different development applications for both operating systems, being Apple and Android. There are frameworks that work with both operating systems. The first being Flutter, and this is a Google developed framework. It streamlines the development process, allowing for packages and features and icons as well that work with both Android and Apple operating systems. So you don't have to worry about developing two different applications for two different operating systems, kind of doubling your costs and doubling the investment of time in developing these applications. Secondly, we have a React Native framework, and this is actually the same framework that's able to be used on websites. And this is why it's so popular, because you can take a React Native website that you develop and reuse many of the components to make a fully functional mobile application without having to reconfigure everything, create everything from scratch. It allows for a more seamless process of creating an application without starting from ground zero all over again. So these are two frameworks to think about. Like I said, there's many languages, there's many frameworks, many that are coming out day by day, but these are two of the main frameworks that are used in app development nowadays. And they're popular for the reasons that I said, one being that they're streamline the process a lot, and secondly, because like React Native, you can use it for both mobile and online websites and reuse a lot of the components without starting over. So before I move on, any lasting questions on mobile applications?
No, we're good.
Great, great. So that does conclude my presentation for the day. And I just want to thank you again for attending, and hopefully this helps empower you to become more of a digital native business. And I'm open to any questions if you have any, or points of clarification. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking on the webinar, you can always email me. My email is jkupa7@gmail.com, or you could reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just search my name in there, Justin Kupa, and I'll reach back as soon as possible. But yeah, now open for questions if we have any.
Yeah, actually, Justin, one did pop up about the cost. So how much does an app cost, like in creation? That was the question that was here in the Zoom.
So that's a great question. It is variable though. That ultimately I would think about it like not how much it costs in total, but how many hours is the developer going to need to create this application, because many contractors, they work on a per hour basis. I would say, depending on the proficiency and the experience of the developer, it could run anywhere from 20 all the way up to $60 an hour. So these are all, at the end of the day, business decisions that you have to make. Are you willing to take a chance on a more inexperienced developer that's a bit cheaper? Maybe if you have like just a simple application or website that you want to build, that might be a viable option. However, in my experience, if you don't pay for it on one end, you may pay for it on another, because with more inexperienced developers, they may not know all the best practices, and they may be just more novice as it is, and you may ultimately have to spend more time trying to fix the application that was somewhat functional on the back end, and then kind of having to pay more on the back end than you did as an upfront investment in the development cost. So ultimately, it's how extensive your application will be, how many features you will need, and then you can multiply that by how many hours you think that would take to ultimately develop, whether it be like 100 hours, and then multiply that by the hourly rate of the developer, and then you'll get to your ultimate cost.
Great. That's a great response. Thank you for that, Justin. Here's another question for inside the, hopefully that answered your question. If you have a follow-up question about the cost of the app, just let me know. Here's another question from here inside the chat. It says, what are a few examples of using Gen AI or Chat GPT for increasing online presence?
So that kind of brings me back to you can oftentimes, the benefit of having this digital presence is both to be seen online, but also to capture information on your customers and see how long they're spending on your website, see how many times they're clicking on this one product. Ultimately, Gen AI is all about leveraging data, and through having digital mediums that can collect this data, like websites, application, blogs, things of that nature, you can see, okay, what are the general actions of my customer, and you can do and basically get a baseline of, okay, customer A spends 5 minutes on this website, so maybe I should or blog posts. Let's say they spend 5 minutes reading a blog post, so I should spend more time creating content around this blog post, things of that nature. So creating digital mediums for customers, potential customers to interact with, will ultimately give you insight into, and you can use some of these generative AI techniques to consolidate this data and insights and make predictive business decisions on where you should invest more of your time, where you should invest more in creating content, what products are customers really clicking on the most, and maybe I should invest in that inventory more, this service a bit more. So it starts with having the data and leverage, and having these digital presences allow you to collect the data to ultimately use Gen AI to make statistical inferences, and ultimately, and even make recommendations on what you should invest in more and what a customer really wants at the end of the day.
That's great information, Justin. Hopefully that answered your question. If it didn't, just ask a follow-up question and I will do that. In the meantime, I have a question for you, Justin. What would you say, this is my favorite question to ask people when they're distributing information about a certain topic, is what are some of the most common mistakes that you see businesses make when establishing their online presence? And what would you recommend that people do to avoid doing that?
Definitely, that's a great question, Miranda. From my experience, I think not having enough information is one of the biggest mistakes I see business owners make. Oftentimes, they'll go the route of contracting out their website development or application development to a contractor in a whole nother country or something like that, because oftentimes you can find developers from other countries. There'll be a communication barrier. There'll be maybe the developer will use a outdated language that, if you want to update and maintain the website or application, it's very hard to, because it's not a current or up to date language or framework. It can just create complexities by just not having the information, either doing the research or attending different talks like these. So you can have, or you will be able to ask the right questions. You will understand the expectations that you can have from developers if you're contracting things out. But ultimately, just having the perspective into all that goes into these digital mediums. The worst thing you want to be is invest all this money into a developer and creating an application, but at the end of the day, you can't. You're reliant on this developer at the end of the day, because you don't really know how it works. You don't know what the components are of it, and that's where a lot of the trouble comes as a business owner. Because as I said earlier, websites, applications, they are a lot of work. Like I said, they're like a kid in some aspects, or a child. They represent you, but there is work that goes into having it represent you in the way that you would ultimately like it to be. So having insight into this, and like even talking to like a consultant or some sort before making these decisions, will ultimately help you have a better perspective and know what to look out for when you're creating these digital mediums.
No, that's really good. Like being informed. I had fortunately I had a good experience with an overseas project management team, but they were overseas, and at times I remember it could be challenging in communicating like exactly how you want it to feel. Because I think a lot of times when people think about their websites and their social media presence, they think about the logistical things, having things up, but people forget that also in your words and in the presence, it's a feeling you're evoking. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the feeling created by someone else who doesn't understand it, it can feel a little bit robotic or, a little stiff. And
Right.
so with that being said, just to jump back to websites, since we're talking about that, because I think most business owners struggle with websites and social media, right? Those are kind of like the big pain points. Every once in a
Mm-hmm.
while, you hear people talking about developing an app, but mostly people's pain points, it feels like the struggles are around having a website and how to develop it and social media. So, with that being said, I have a website question for you. Let's say, in thinking about someone having a website, what would you say is the most important thing to consider as they're thinking about building their website? Because sometimes I think people make a lot of mistakes around that. What would you say is the most important thing to think about first when it comes to having a website for your business?
Great question. There are quite a few considerations, but I think ultimately the key one is to, like I said, I think I alluded to this earlier, but knowing knowing your customers are by far the two most important things. Firstly, by knowing your business, well, I'll start with knowing your customer. Knowing your customer will allow you to not over engineer something or not make too many bells and whistles when the customer only wanted to be able to click on something and check out. So knowing your customer and knowing what they ultimately need or want is like the guiding factor when creating a website. And then like I know business owners often want something very flashy, something that will be attractive to young people or whoever their constituents are. But ultimately it comes down to the functionality and is it a delightful and seamless process for me as a customer to do what I need to do to interact with your service. Secondly, knowing who you are as a business. Um, this might even keep you from over engineering something, but say you have maybe only 100 customers. I don't think do you really need a very what I say, a very robust website that has a blog, has I don't know, products and services when you're only a nonprofit that just wants to inform people about a subject or have consultations, things like that. So just knowing what you provide as a business, where you're at as a business, and who your customers are, and at what scale you're at. These are all questions that you should ask yourself before making a website, so you don't over-engineer, over-invest money when you're just not at the scale to compete. Like you're not at the scale of Facebook with billions of customers using your service, so you don't need the same scale of infrastructure or digital infrastructure that Facebook would need. There's a cost that comes with that, both in complexity, investment of time, and also investment of maintenance of the website. So knowing all the answers to the questions as yourself as a business and knowing the answers to what your customers need are the two most important things to start with when creating a website, I believe.
Very good. That's a great response. And I think as you were talking, it was sparking some of the thoughts of some of the more common mistakes that I see people make with their websites is they use it as, like you were saying, when you start out talking about, think about your consumer, like your customer. A lot of people make their websites like a bio. They pile on so much information about the organization, the business, forgetting that the purpose of the website is consumers are coming there because they need something. And so putting that at the forefront and then maybe putting the information about you towards the bottom in bulk. But most of the
Definitely.
time when people are looking for your website, they know who you are and what you're doing. So you really don't have to put so much about you in the forefront, and then consumers end up digging through all of that trying to get to what they really need, or they give up before they get to it. So
I
that was
understand that for sure.
very good information. Um, Question about what would you say are some of the online like presence like management that people are doing? Like what are the trendy things that you're seeing right now that people are doing to manage their online presence? And how can you tell us about those and recommend that we stay ahead of the curve? Like, is there certain apps that people are using to stay above the game, or what are you seeing where you are that you're saying, hey, if I was you, this is what I would get? Like if you were talking to your homeboy and saying, hey, this is what you need to do, what would you tell us to do to stay ahead of the curve with staying present online?
I think in order to stay ahead of the curve, um, one of the best things you can do to stay ahead of the curve is actually be in the curve, like whether that be like doing market research on people that are your competitors, to understand, okay, what are my competitors doing and am I ahead of them? Am I on par with them or am I below them? To understand where you're at and where you need to improve on. Also, like I said, like I alluded to earlier, using data to your advantage. I think that's a unlock for your business almost, because you have, like, businesses are very directed by information, data, and the habits of their customers, and this data ultimately shows, okay, what products are selling, okay, how much time are they spending on my website, okay, is this content that I'm creating, how many views are they getting at, am I getting likes that I'm expecting. Ultimately data will tell you where you need to pivot, and through mediums like creating content and actually getting a digital presence so you can see the engagement that you're having from your customers, constituents, and et cetera. This will help you make ultimately informed business decisions. Maybe you want to use Gen I to some extent to help you synthesize if you have thousands of customers, tens of thousands of customers that are visiting your website and you can't really sift through that data like line by line, hand by hand. But ultimately getting information on how is my product or service being received in the marketplace and what are the people visiting my websites doing ultimately will tell you, well, should I double down in this area or should I pivot to another area? So yeah, those are two of the things that come top of mind. Just being in the market or being in the trend, so to say, and seeing what your competitors and or partners are doing, and also leveraging, once you have these digital presences, leveraging the data that you can glean from the interactions that constituents are making on your websites or digital mediums.
That's a great response. Thank you for that, Justin. We have a question from the chat here on the Zoom. It says, Bobby Crudup says, what is the best way to market your business online? Thinking about, I guess, all of these ways that we're mentioning. So between websites, social media, and the mobile app, what would you say is where people should start and is the best way for them to jump in?
I think, well, also knowing yourself and your business, like there are some people that have businesses. Like I have a friend that I've done a website for. She's a lawyer. Um, all of her clients come through word of mouth, and she didn't even need a website for the longest. And like the website was just like an additional nice to have so she could share her business card and look a little bit more professional. But she was a very successful lawyer without even having a digital presence or a website. So knowing what's been working for you thus far, um, and even doubling down on that is a great way to kind of market your business once you do have that digital presence, whether that be a website, blog, etc. I think some great ways to market your business is, there was a big craze about a year or two ago, like everybody was talking about search engine optimization. Ultimately, that's just having the right keywords attributed to your website. So when somebody Google search, your website will come up third rather than on the eighth page or something like that. So having a good search engine optimization strategy once you have a website will help influence if you just have a generic search or somebody that doesn't know your business particularly but is just trying to solve a problem, like I need lawn care service or something like that. If you provide that, making sure you have a great search engine optimization strategy for that. Also, like I said, the strategies with social media nowadays. Many people are finding their favorite business on just through the algorithm of scrolling a timeline, things of that nature. So if you may want to invest in social media marketing, those are options as well. But ultimately, having a clear understanding of your consumer constituent and where they are at in the digital realm, whether that be on social media, whether that be on Medium blog posts, things of that nature, knowing who your customer is or a generic outline of your customer and their actions and what you would suspect they would be in the digital marketplace, trying to just be wherever they will be ultimately and kind of be a step ahead of the game so they can more or less like just fall into your digital medium, whether that be a website, blog post, etc. But just making it easier to meet them where they're at, I think that's a great strategy as well.
Great. That's great, Justin. Thank you for that. And in wrapping up, I don't see any more questions online or in the chat, but in wrapping up, just to ask this final question around, because a lot of what I heard you say today, it was a lot of the trend and the commonality and the pattern in your conversation sounds like in each one of these markets, whether it's your website, your social media, or creating a mobile app, the very first thing we're leaning on and the biggest component is listening to your audience and doing what feels right for what your audience is telling you. So whereas your lawyer friend really didn't need it because referrals were her thing, there are some consumers that have to rely heavily on where their audience is and what they're doing. And so I think it's important for everybody listening to know that your consumers are going to be your most valuable resource of information to inform you of how to create your website, how to navigate through social media, or what to do with your app. So for the person that's feeling overwhelming, Justin, and just getting started and considering that maybe they're in their gut thinking about all the technical things, what would be your advice? Because when I think about business, I feel like business is a lot of gut. It's a lot of intuition. It's a lot of taking risks. What would you say for the person who is trying to have a digital presence with their business and they're feeling overwhelmed with all this information? What advice would you give them in how to navigate and tackle this to start?
Right, that's a great question. I think one key is staying in your lane where you are right now. A lot of people want to tack onto the latest trends, whether that be, okay, I need Gen AI in my website, even though I'm a small scale business with only hundreds of customers. I don't really think just following a trend, it it may it may lead to some traction or benefit, but if you're just following a trend, I don't think that's as good as creating like organic growth, like really talking to your customers, seeing what they need, seeing what they want, and then you'll get organic growth by saying, okay, this business is hitting all of solving all of my pain points, giving me everything that I need, then yeah, I'm gonna tell my friend word of mouth that this business is a really good business and they provide exactly what you need if you ever need lawn care service, something like that. So staying in your lane and making sure like taking it a step at a time. You don't need to jump 3 steps to Gen AI if you're at step A right now. So just staying in your lane and make sure you're hitting all the pain points for your customer at the moment, and then like once you then organically, I feel like more often than not I've seen more businesses start to get scale, and then they're like, okay, I'm at the scale where I can't do everything by myself, so now Gen AI can help work in confluence with me as a business owner to help continue to grow and grow my presence and grow my scale as a business. So staying in your lane and making sure you're doing what you need to be doing right now for your customers is always a great way to, because there's always like technology isn't going to stop changing. There's always going to be a new thing. Next year there will definitely be a new thing once Gen AI kind of dies down a bit. But just so you're not chasing the carrot every single time something new comes out, making sure you're doing what you need to be doing right now is always a good strategy in my opinion.
Very good. Well, this has been a very informative talk, Justin. I want to thank you. Do you have any final words for everybody? Or I feel like you said enough and we talked a lot of information, but is there any final words that you want to leave the audience with?
Um, yeah, I think I'll just double down on what I said a second ago. Like, just try not, like, technology is all constantly evolving, always changing. Try not to chase the carrot too much because even me as a developer, I kind of get caught up in the latest trends, even though maybe sometimes I should stick to just like becoming a master at whatever technology I'm working on right now and not Gen AI. But just try not to chase the carrot too much because it can be overwhelming trying to stay up to date on every new development in technology, and just like really get good at what your customer needs from you, and that will be the North Star for you, hopefully.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time, Justin. We really
Of
appreciate
course.
you, your knowledge, and your expertise here. This has been a very informative and rich thing. If you are watching via social media or on YouTube, please share this with a friend, someone that you know that could utilize and benefit from this information today. And feel free to stay connected. Stay connected to the Bean Path by way of social media on Facebook, on Instagram. Join the mailing list for Bean Path as well. And we do these TED Talks every month. So make sure you join us next month for our TED Talk, and make sure you keep the notifications on so that you can be aware of that. And not only these tech talks, but also the many other events and programs that are offered through the Bean Path Makerspace. So make sure you stay connected to this organization. Shout out to Dr. Nashley Cephas and the entire team there. Again, my name is Miranda Joyner. I am the co-founder of Succeed and Elevate, and we are in partnership with Bean Path to bring you these tech talks. We're really excited to be a part of this growing community. We will see you all at the next Tech Talk. Until then, stay connected and stay safe and emotionally stable.
Have a good one. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.